Hello, my name is Ken Nair, and I'm with Christ Coast Ministries, where we disciple men to become the kind of spiritual leaders who are living examples of the Christ. The topic for this message is the greatest goal a husband can achieve, and that would be where he is a living portrayal of the Christ to his wife. Let's start here. The Christ does indeed understand the mind and the spirit of every woman. As such, if a husband is serious about achieving this goal, being like the Christ, that is to understand his wife's mind and her spirit, as he does, he'll need to have within himself an above average commitment to Christianity. His attitude will be that of, I'm looking to God to help me submit to my wife so I can gain a Christ-like understanding of her mind and her spirit as Jesus does. Can you believe I actually said that? That a Christian husband should submit to his wife? Of course, now I've got to address God's directive given to us in Ephesians 5:21, King James Version, which instructs us, saying, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. That's both husband and wife submitting to each other. How do you do that? Following the instructions given in verse 21 will require reevaluating the traditional thinking regarding submission found in verse 22. Verse 22 is widely known throughout the Christian community. That's where a wife is exclusively instructed to submit herself to her husband. No one seems to focus on verse 21. It's as though it's been completely dismissed, neglected, erased, as though it doesn't even exist. Traditional theology, when it comes to submission, is based typically on verse 22, which is typically interpreted as a wife becoming, in exaggerated cases, chattel, in servitude, at his disposal, a nothing to his being her everything. In the mildest form, it's her being submitted to his authority in whatever way he determines she is to be. If then, verse 21, wherein they are to be mutually submitted to one another, is to be applied in the same way as verse 22, let me exaggerate what that would look like. She says, I submit myself to your authority. He in turn says, no, I submit myself to your authority. She replies, no, I must submit myself to your authority. He insists, no, it's my place to submit to your authority. That exercise in fake submission can be carried on all day long. And operationally, physical submission could never be accomplished, if that's the actual requirement of verse 21. Is it even possible to think that God would be the author of that kind of fake confusion? Does that kind of silliness sound like something God would advocate? Would he create a man and a woman to compete with each other about who's going to be under whose authority in a way that mentally devalues each to the other? Stop for a minute and mentally reflect on how that process could possibly end up with either actually being submitted to the other. But please remember, and this is a foundational truth, God is spirit. That means his foundational reasons are meant to accomplish spiritual objectives. Because that's true, let's attach spiritual significance to his words. Submission in the Greek is hupotasso, which consists of two words, tasso, which is defined as to arrange or assign in an orderly manner. Whose order? Hopefully God's. Hupo talks about being under or beneath, accepting an inferior position or condition. Let me continue to build the spiritual concept presented in Ephesians 5:21. Paraphrased, it's this: God has designed every husband as a man with his particular motivational spiritual gift, and every wife as a woman with her particular motivational spiritual gift. And each are specialists in the area of their motivational spiritual gift. Both the man and the woman have a specific God-ordained purpose and task to accomplish for God in each other's lives. God's goal is that they benefit one another by increasing each other's ability to portray godliness, which is to be the outcome of what they learn from one another's area of expertise. Those husbands and wives who are spiritually aware of God's design for a marriage will recognize the God-designed, specifically different nature of men and women, and will honor God by submitting to that part of each other's God-given nature wherein each has been made a specialist. Let me quote again Ephesians 5:21. Submitting yourselves therefore to one to another in the fear of God. Let me explain exactly what in the fear of God is telling us. The word fear in the Greek is phobos, from phebomai, and means to be put in fear, alarm, or fright, exceedingly fear, terror. Then, of God. In the Greek is theosebes, reverent of God, worshiper of God. Let me show you how I paraphrase Ephesians 5:21 for myself. I saw the need to demand of myself that I have a theosebes, worshipful reverence for God. I become more and more aware of the incredible lessons that God wanted to teach me from His Word, which caused me to phebomai, be exceedingly afraid of missing out on those lessons. Here's what God wanted me to learn. As the spiritual leader, through my example of hupotasso, submitting to God, that is by hupotasso, submitting to His objectives, which includes hupotasso, submitting to His will, I was able to receive His spiritual help from the helper He created for me. There's that occupational title God gave a wife again, helper. As I voluntarily, hupotasso, submitted to my wife, I was able to witness what her God-ordained area of expertise consisted of and learn from it. I learned that it was much easier for her to operate in the emotional, spiritual realm than I was. Therefore, I could learn how to enter that emotional, spiritual realm through her help. As a spiritual leader, my example of hupotasso, submitting to God's will, in order to learn what He wanted to teach me through hupotasso, submitting to my wife, I set an example, one she could follow. As she observed her spiritual leader exhibit hupotasso, that is, to submit myself to Christ-like spiritual leadership, then as she observed me hupotasso, submit and make a commitment to God to illustrate the Christ to her, she also became more confident in hupotasso, submitting to God's care for her through my Christ-like care for her. Therein, as I voluntarily, hupotasso, submitted to my wife, my example caused her to voluntarily, hupotasso, submit to my leadership. We have hupotasso submitted ourselves one to another. That enabled her to witness what my God-ordained area of expertise consisted of and have confidence in learning through my Christ-like leadership. She learned it was much easier for me to operate in the mechanical, physical realm than she was. She saw me make physical, mechanical application of God's spiritual lessons that she could follow. That, my friend, is spiritual leadership. All that is an example of our being free to recognize our own areas of inferiority so we can overcome them by utilizing each other's area of expertise, and therein enhance our ability to exemplify those areas of expertise as we hupotasso submitted to our spouse, each other. Those couples who have become aware of each other's area of expertise are free to submit themselves one to another, so they too can accomplish God's goal for and through each other. That's what God and I want for you. Thank you for joining me. If you feel this message has been a blessing to you, please subscribe. It's free. Share it with others. Like it and comment on it. Then too, maybe the Lord might prompt you to consider blessing Christ Quest Ministries with a contribution. Till next time, this is Ken Nair, signing off.